Whether you're preparing for your instrument airplane knowledge exam or your practical test, this module is designed to remove all of the mystery and confusion about hold entries. If you are studying for your knowledge exam, you will undoubtedly see something like this. You are traveling to the XYZ VOR on a current heading of 155 degrees. You received this instruction from ATC. November 123 Alpha Bravo, hold south of the XYZ VOR on the 180 radial. What are you supposed to do with this? After completing this module, you will not have to ask that question again. Section 5-3-8 of the AIM describes the hold entry procedures. This information is accurate, but is not easy to follow. When I was studying for my knowledge exam, I tried to use the method in the AIM, but I was not able to consistently get the correct hold entry. I knew I needed to find a way that I can consistently get the correct hold entry. The method I have included in this lesson is a combination of different methods and lessons that I have studied. The result is an easy to follow method that will make sure you get the proper hold entry every time. Holding pattern fundamentals. First, we need to make sure we have the terminology for our hold. Let's use the hold diagram in the Instrument Flying Handbook. The hold entry fix is assigned by ATC and is the point where the hold begins. The holding fix is either a nav aid or a waypoint or fix identified by a radial from a nav aid. The holding course is the radial from the nav aid used to identify the holding fix. The inbound leg is the course to the holding fix and always ends at the holding fix. If the holding fix is a VOR, the inbound course will be the reciprocal 180 degrees from the holding course. The length of the inbound leg will either be timed or distance. The standard hold time will be 1 minute, but other leg times can be assigned by ATC. The fix end is the turn that occurs at the end of the inbound leg. The turn direction is assigned by ATC as either right, left, standard, or as published. Standard is the same as right turns. If there is no mention of a turn direction, standard or right turns are assigned. If assigned to hold as published, the holding pattern, including the turns, are depicted on the chart. The outbound leg is the course that runs away from the holding fix in the opposite direction of the inbound leg and starts after the 180-degree turn from the holding fix at the fix end. The outbound leg course is always the reciprocal of the inbound leg. The outbound direction determines which holding entry procedure is selected. More on that in a moment. The length of the outbound leg must be adjusted so the time or distance to the holding fix on the inbound leg matches the hold instructions. For example, if assigned a 1 minute leg time, the length of the outbound leg must be determined so after the turn from the outbound leg to the inbound leg is complete, the time on the inbound leg is 1 minute until the holding fix is reached. The holding pattern is the racetrack pattern that is flown for the hold. The holding side and the non-holding side are always determined by the direction of the turn. The holding side is on the same side as the direction of the turn and is the side of the holding pattern on which the outbound leg is flown. The non-holding side is the side away from the direction of the turns. The protected area is the area surrounding the holding pattern that assures obstacle clearance in the hold. The holding side has a larger protected area than the non-holding side. Therefore, it is important to note and follow the direction of turn assigned for the hold. Now that we have the basics, there are 3 different parts of the hold. 1, the approach to the hold. 2, the hold entry procedure. And 3, the holding pattern. Let's use figure 5-3-4 from the AIM to discuss the parts of the hold. The approach to the hold begins at the airplane's current location and runs direct to the holding fix. If there is no wind, the airplane's heading to the holding fix would be the same as the course to the holding fix. However, when the wind correction is needed, the heading and the course will be different. There are 3 different hold entry procedures: direct entry, teardrop entry, and parallel entry. Once you have arrived at the holding fix, you will fly the hold entry procedure, which will always begin away with a turn away from the holding fix. The proper hold entry procedure is determined by the angle created by 1, the heading to the holding fix, and 2, the direction of the airplane flying away from the holding fix. Because the direction of the outbound leg also runs away from the holding fix, we use the direction or course of our outbound leg to identify the correct hold entry. Although you are free to choose whichever hold entry procedure you want, the three options were designed to 1, keep you within the protected area of the hold, and 2, use a nice, easy standard rate turn to complete the maneuver. The easiest hold entry procedure to complete is a direct entry procedure because once you reach the fix, you enter one nice, easy standard rate turn until you are flying the outbound leg. The second easiest hold entry procedure is the teardrop entry, which requires 2 turns. Once you arrive at the fix, the first turn is 30 degrees toward the holding side of the inbound leg. The length of the initial outbound leg of the teardrop entry will be the time or distance needed for the inbound leg to match the hold instructions. For example, 1 minute legs. At the end of the initial outbound leg, there is a standard rate turn of approximately 210 degrees to intercept the holding course on the inbound leg. The last hold entry procedure is the parallel entry, and it requires 3 turns. The first turn is an initial standard rate turn away from the holding fix to a course parallel and on the non-holding side of the inbound leg. As with the teardrop entry, the length of the initial outbound leg is the time or distance needed for the inbound leg to match the hold instructions. At the end of the initial outbound leg, there's a standard rate turn of approximately 225 degrees to intercept the holding course. Finally, as the airplane intercepts the holding course, another turn is required to track the holding course on the inbound leg. You may be asking, if a direct entry is easiest, why don't we just use direct entry all the time, meaning 1 standard rate turn to reach the outbound direction? Well, try it for yourself. Draw the holding fix and the hold. Then draw the direct entry from each direction around the holding fix. Push pause and take a minute to try it. Welcome back. What you should have seen from that exercise is that sometimes the direct entry works just fine. From other directions, however, when you attempt a direct entry or single standard rate turn to enter the hold, you cannot do the entry unless you add in some outbound leg, which then makes the entry shape similar to the teardrop or parallel entry we have discussed. In the same way, using a teardrop when a parallel entry is clearly indicated can result in a very challenging and risky turn. That is why we need 3 hold entry procedures. Now let's talk about the effect of wind. As mentioned earlier, wind may cause the heading to the holding fix to be different from the course to the holding fix. Because the number of degrees to be turned to reach the initial direction away from the holding fix depends on the airplane's heading to the holding fix, we use the airplane's heading and not the course to determine the proper hold entry procedure. In most situations, the difference between the heading and the course will not change the proper hold entry procedure. However, in strong winds or when the choice of hold entry procedure is close to the 2 options, the difference may be very important. If you use the airplane's heading, you will always get the correct entry procedure. According to the AIM, the wind correction used on the outbound leg should be 3 times the wind correction used on the inbound leg. In our example here, the wind correction on the inbound leg is 10 degrees, so the wind correction on the outbound leg would be 3 times that, or 30 degrees. I created my own teaching tool for hold entries. I designed this after practicing several hold entry questions and trying to capture all of the information I needed to determine the proper hold entry. Every time I did a hold entry question, I would practice by writing out all of the information so that after a few efforts, I had the structure and process memorized. The method I will show you next is based on this hold entry tool, but that is only to build an understanding of how to work these problems. After that, I will show you how to determine the hold entry for the knowledge test without the tool, and then how to determine the hold entry when you are in the airplane. Let's start with a common scenario you will find on the knowledge test. You are traveling to the XYZ VOR on a current heading of 155 degrees. You received this instruction from ATC. November 123 Alpha Bravo, hold south of XYZ VOR on the 180 radial. This is how you break down what you have just received. First, write down the instructions as you heard or read them. In this case, the region of the hold is south, the fix or waypoint is the XYZ VOR, the radial is 180, and the direction of turn is standard or right turns because nothing was mentioned in the instruction. Now that you have the instruction, you are ready to work the rest of the problem. The next step is to diagram the hold, and in this case, the XYZ VOR. Draw and label the XYZ VOR. Next, draw the current course or heading to the VOR. Now draw the radial from the VOR. Remember that radials run from the VOR. Now, starting at the fix, draw the direction of turn, in this case, right turns. Next, draw and label the outbound course. And then, add the last turn to complete the holding pattern. Now that you have a diagram to visualize the hold, we can start our entry calculation. We know our heading is 155, and we know our turns are right turns. And we can look at our diagram and see that our outbound course is 180. Next, we need to confirm that we are using the correct wheel. We have right turns and we are using the right turn wheel. To determine the hold entry, we first need to line up the circle A on the heading. Rotate the wheel until the circle A is on the 155. The next step is to mark the outbound course, 180. Next, look at the section where the outbound course is located, and that determines your hold entry. Teardrop. Write teardrop in the last line of the entry calculation, and you have the correct answer. Now let's try a left turn scenario using the same setup. You are traveling to the XYZ VOR on a current heading of 155 degrees. You received this instruction from ATC. November 123 Alpha Bravo, hold south of XYZ VOR on the 180 radial. Let's break this one down. First, write down the instructions as you heard or read them. Starting with the region of the hold, south, then the fix or waypoint is the XYZ VOR, the radial is 180, and this time the direction of turn is left. Now let's work on the rest of the problem. The next step is to diagram the hold, and in this case, the XYZ VOR. Draw and label the XYZ VOR. Next, draw the current course or heading to the VOR, 155 degrees. Now, draw the radial from the VOR. Again, remember that radials run from the VOR. Now, starting at the fix, draw the direction of turn, in this case, left turns. Next, draw and label the outbound course, and then add the last turn to complete the holding pattern. Now that you have a diagram to visualize the hold, we start our entry calculation. We know our heading is 155. We know our turns are left turns. And we can look at our diagram and see that our outbound course is 180. We need to confirm we are using the correct wheel. So we have left turns and we are using the left wheel. First, line up the circle A on the heading. Rotate the wheel until the circle A is on the 155. The next step is to mark the outbound course, or 180. Look at the section where the outbound course is located, and that determines your hold entry. Parallel. Write parallel in the last line of the entry calculation, and there's your answer. Now let's try a hold entry scenario where you are directed to hold at a fix that is not the VOR. Here is the setup. You are east of the XYZ VOR on Victor 123, heading 090 degrees. You receive this instruction from ATC. November 123 Alpha Bravo, hold east of LMNOP on the XYZ VOR 090 radial. First, write down the instructions as you heard or read them. Starting with the region of the hold, east, then the fix or waypoint is the LMNOP, the radial is the XYZ VOR 090 radial, and the direction of the turn is standard or right turn because there was no specific mention of a turn. Now let's work on the rest of the problem. The next step is to draw the hold, but this time it includes the XYZ VOR and the fix LMNOP. Draw and label the XYZ VOR, but this time draw the 090 radial from the VOR because that is where the LMNOP fix is located. Next, draw the current course or heading to the fix, 090. Now, draw the 090 radial starting at the LMNOP fix heading east. This path will be your inbound course heading 270. Now, starting at the fix, draw the direction of turns, in this case, right turns. Next, draw and label the outbound course, 090. And then add the last turn to complete the holding pattern. Now that you have the diagram to visualize the hold, we can start our entry calculation. We know our heading is 090, and we know our turns are right turns. And we can look at our diagram and see that our outbound course is also 090. Next, we need to confirm we are using the correct wheel. We have right turns, and we are using the right turn wheel. Rotate the wheel until the circle A is on the 090. The next step is to mark the outbound course, which is also 090. You can see that this outbound course is directly on the line between teardrop and parallel entry. This is where the order of priority comes in. The teardrop entry takes higher priority over parallel entry, so the correct hold entry is teardrop. Write teardrop in the last entry calculation line, and there's your answer once again. Now let's try another hold at a fix that is not a VOR, but this time left turns. Here's the setup. You are east of the XYZ VOR on Victor 123 heading 090 degrees. You received this instruction from ATC. November 123 Alpha Bravo, hold west of LMNOP on the XYZ VOR 090 radial, left turns. First, write down the instructions as you heard or read them. Start with the region of hold, west. Then the fix or waypoint is LMNOP, the radial is the XYZ VOR 090 radial, and the direction of the turn is left turns. Now let's work the rest of the problem. The next step is to diagram the hold, and again, it includes the XYZ VOR and the fix LMNOP. Draw and label the XYZ VOR and draw the 090 radial from the VOR because that is where the LMNOP fix is located. Next, draw the current course or heading to the VOR, 090 degrees. Now, draw the 090 radial starting at the LMNOP fix heading west This path will be your inbound course heading 090. Now, starting at the fix, draw the direction of turn, in this case, left turns. Next, draw and label the outbound course 270. And then add the last turn to complete the holding pattern. Now that you have the diagram to visualize the hold, let's start our hold entry calculation. We know our heading is 090, and we know we have left turns. We can look at our diagram and see that our outbound course is 270. Next, we need to confirm we are using the correct wheel. We have left turns, and we are using the left turn wheel. Line up the circle A on the heading. Rotate the wheel until the circle A is on the 090. The next step is to mark the outbound course, which is 270. When we look at the section where the outbound course is located, we will see that this time our entry is direct. Write direct in the last line of the entry calculation. Although you should go through the exercise to determine the proper hold entry, you will find that any time your course is the same as the inbound course to the fix, you will have a direct entry. For your instrument airplane knowledge test, you will not be able to bring in anything like the sliding tool we used above, but that's okay. We can get the same answer with a pencil, paper, 2 lines, and our labels. Let's start with our flight scenario. You are traveling to the XYZ VOR on a current heading of 155 degrees. You receive this instruction from ATC. November 123 Alpha Bravo, hold south of the XYZ VOR on the 180 radial. Step 1, write down the instructions as you read them. Region of hold, south, fix, XYZ VOR, radial 180, and turns are standard because this instruction did not specify any turn direction. Step 2, draw the VOR on your paper and label it XYZ VOR. Then, draw the current course or heading to the VOR, in this case the 155 degrees. Then, draw the 180 radial from the VOR. Remembering radials run from the VOR. Then, starting at the fix, draw the direction of the turn. Standard means right turns. From the end of the turn, draw and label the outbound course. And finally, draw the circle that completes the holding pattern. With that complete, use the information on your diagram to fill in the entry calculation information. Heading we know is 155. Turns are right turns, and outbound course is 180. Starting with the direction of the turn, right or left, draw the hold entry bracket and add the labels for the sections. Plus 70 degrees for teardrop, and a 2, meaning teardrop is the second priority, then minus 110 degrees for parallel, and a 3, meaning parallel is the third priority. Then label the direct section with a 1, meaning direct is the first priority. Then write the heading below the R for the right turns. After that, add 70 to the heading of 155 and label the teardrop direct boundary 225. Then label the parallel direct boundary by either subtracting 110 from the heading or subtracting 180 to the teardrop direct boundary to get 045. When I do these hold entry problems, I will often subtract 110 and then confirm my math by making sure the number I got is 180 degrees from the number I calculated for the teardrop direct boundary. Our sections are now complete. Direct first priority is 225 to 045. Teardrop second priority is 155 to 225. and parallel third priority is 045 to 155. With the bracket labeled, identify the section in which the outbound course 180 falls. 180 is between 155 and 225. That means the entry is teardrop. Write teardrop in the last line of the entry calculation. Let's do that again with the same scenario, but this time we'll use left turns in our hold. Once again, you are traveling to the XYZ VOR on a current heading of 155 degrees. You receive this instruction from ATC. November 123 Alpha Bravo, hold south of the XYZ VOR on the 180 radial, left turns. Step 1. Write down the instructions as you read them. Region of the hold is south, fixes XYZ VOR, radial 180, and turns are left. Step 2. Draw the VOR on your paper and label it XYZ VOR. Then, draw the current course or heading to the VOR, in this case the 155 degrees. Then, draw the 180 radial from the VOR. Remember, radials always run from the VOR. Then, starting at the fix, draw the direction of the turn, in this case, left. From the end of the turn, draw and label the outbound course, 180. And finally, draw the circle that completes the holding pattern. With that complete, use the information on your diagram to fill in the entry calculation. Heading we know is 155, turns are left turns, and outbound course is 180. Start by marking the direction of the turn. Left, draw the hold entry bracket and add labels for the sections. Minus 70 degrees for teardrop and a 2, meaning teardrop is the second priority. Then 100 degrees, 10 degrees for parallel and a 3, meaning parallel is the third priority. Then label the direct section with a 1, meaning direct is the first priority. Then write the heading below the L. After that, subtract 70 from the heading of 155 and label the teardrop direct boundary 085. Then label the parallel direct boundary by either adding 110 to the heading or subtracting 180 to the teardrop entry, teardrop direct boundary to get 265. Confirm that your numbers for the boundaries are 180 degrees apart. Our sections are now complete. Direct first priority is 265 to 085. Teardrop second priority is 085 to 155. And parallel third priority is 155 to 265. With the bracket labeled, identify the section in which the outbound course 180 falls. 180 is between 155 and 265. That means the entry is parallel. Write parallel in the last line of the entry calculation. Here are some additional things you should know about holding patterns. For each hold, the FAA has established a protected area around each hold. The specific dimensions of the holding space are determined by the criteria listed in Order 8260.3 Echo, the United States Standard for Terminal Instrument Procedures, known as TERPS. The exact dimensions of the protected area for a hold are not published and not every hold is the same, but the holding protected area consists of a primary area, the area used for the hold, and a secondary area, which is approximately a 2 nautical mile wide perimeter around the primary area. The important thing to remember about the protected area is that it is large enough to provide a buffer for wind correction, varying ground speeds, and turn radius, so the safety of flight will not be affected. In order to remain in the protected area, you must make sure to fly the correct hold direction, left or right. The second thing to know is that the FAA has established maximum holding speeds for the hold depending on altitude. This table is in Order 8260.3 Echo also, but is also published in the AIM under the holding section 5-3-8 as Table 5-3-20. Because airspeed determines the radius of the turn used in the holding pattern, The FAA has established maximum holding speeds in order to limit the airspace around the holding pattern that must be protected. Hopefully, drawing out the hold and the entry will better help you visualize the hold entry procedure. Now, however, we have to translate what we have done from paper into the airplane. Remember, with the hold entry tool, our first step was to align the A on the heading to identify the proper entry. We located the section in which the outbound course was located. In the airplane, we can use the directional gyro, DG, or HSI. You may hear a recommendation to use the OBS to identify the entry, but be careful. If there's a wind correction angle, your heading may be different from the OBS course. Frequently, this distinction will not matter, but if your outbound course is near the boundaries between two hold sections, it can make a difference. For this reason, I recommend using the directional gyro, DG, or HSI to identify the proper hold entry. The DG or HSI always places the heading up or at the top. This makes identifying the hold entry easier than our paper exercise because we do not have to rotate the A to the airplane's heading like we did for our knowledge test exercises with the hold entry tool. Instead, because the heading is always at the top, the three segments, teardrop, parallel, and direct, always remain in the same position on the DG or HSI. That means all we need to do to identify the hold entry is to identify the section in which the outbound course is located. We use the outbound course because after you reach the fix on your current heading, the outbound course will determine what you fly to establish yourself in the fix. In the airplane, you will obviously not have the hold entry overlay, but you don't need it. For right turns, we can visually replicate the overlay by using our right hand for a right turn hold or our left hand for a left turn hold. Place your pointer finger on the current heading. Then place your thumb 110 degrees to the left of the heading, which you can find by putting your thumb at 90 degrees, which is easily identifiable on the DG or HSI, and then sliding 20 degrees down. Now place the middle finger 70 degrees to the right of the pointer finger. Again, you can start at the 90-degree point and slide your middle finger 20 degrees up. With your right hand in place over the DG or HSI, now locate the outbound course and determine the section in which it is located. In this example, our heading is 155 degrees. If the outbound course is 090, that would fall in the parallel section. If the outbound course is 180, that would fall in the teardrop entry section. If the outbound course were 270, your hand may block your view of the outbound course, but think about this. If we know that the course is below the thumb and middle finger, or if we do not see it above the middle finger, then the only possible option is the direct entry. In other words, for direct entry, we do not need to see where the course is located. That is how you use the right hand method to determine the hold entry for a right turn hold. The same steps apply for left turn holds, but as the name implies, we use our left hand and reverse the 70-degree teardrop section and the 110-degree parallel section. We will do an example of each so that you can see how this works. This slide is to reference another note about the hand method. Some depictions will make it appear that the hand is flat against the DG or HSI with the fingers spread apart to identify the sections. Try it on your own right now. Unless you are double jointed, it is not possible, or at least uncomfortable, to make a 70 and 110 degree angle between your fingers. That is why I suggest using the tips of your fingers and thumb on the numbers, because you can get the 70, 100, and 110 degree angle, and you are also able to see the sections more clearly. So let's try out the right hand method with our previous scenario. You are traveling to the XYZ VOR on a current heading of 155. You received this instruction from ATC. November 123 Alpha Bravo, hold south of the XYZ VOR on the 180 radial. Using your right hand, put your pointer finger at the top of your DG at 155. Next, put your thumb 100 degrees to the left of your pointer finger. 155 minus 110 is 045. Now, put your middle finger 70 degrees to the right of your pointer finger. 155 plus 70 is 225. Now find your outbound course 180. You can see that your outbound course is in the teardrop section, so your hold entry is teardrop. Now let's try out the left-hand method using the same scenario. Once again, you are traveling to the XYZ VOR on a current heading of 155 degrees. You received this instruction from ATC. November 123 Alpha Bravo, hold south of the XYZ VOR on the 180 radial, left turns. Using your left hand, put your pointer finger at the top of your DG at 155. Next, put your thumb 110 degrees to the right of your pointer finger. 155 plus 110 is 265. Now put your middle finger 70 degrees to the left of your pointer finger. 155 minus 70 is 085. Now find your outbound course, 180. You can see that your outbound course is parallel in the parallel section, so your hold entry is parallel. Here are a couple notes to remember as we close down this lesson. The hold entry is based on your airplane flying a direct course to the holding fixed position or VOR, and you will enter the hold using a standard rate turn. Neither the regulations nor ATC requires you to use a particular hold entry, and you will likely remain within the protected area regardless of the entry you select. However, an incorrect hold entry may require a higher rate of turn, which in IMC conditions could be hazardous. Always think about what the accident report would read. The pilot's selection of the incorrect hold entry required the airplane to bank more steeply, which in turn resulted in spatial disorientation and a loss of directional control. Instead, the proper hold entry assures a standard rate turn, which is what we practice. That's why we want to make sure we identify the correct hold entry. For right turns, adding 70 degrees to the heading for a teardrop and subtract 110 degrees from the heading for parallel. Everything else is direct entry. For left turns, subtract 70 degrees from the heading for teardrop and add 110 degrees to the heading for parallel. Everything else is direct entry. If the outbound course is between two options, remember the priority. 1 direct, 2 teardrop, and 3 parallel. Select the higher priority. The good news is that the priority matches the ease of maneuvering. A direct entry is easier to maneuver than a teardrop entry, and a teardrop entry is easier to maneuver than the parallel entry. Do not forget that winds might affect your heading to the hold, which, depending upon the outbound course, could change the hold entry. For that reason, make sure use the DG and not the HSI, or DG and HSI and not the OBS. And last, if ATC needs to assign you a hold, in most circumstances, the assignment will come well in advance of the holding point and is likely to be a direct entry. ATC is not trying to make the hold more complicated, if it can be avoided. They do not want to take a chance on pilots getting all turned around in the sky trying to perform an entry maneuver. So relax. You have time to figure out the proper hold entry and your plan to complete the entry maneuver. As you practice more hold entries using the right-hand, left-hand method, you will get to the point where you will know the correct entry just by knowing your outbound course and looking at the DG or HSI. Until then, just keep current on your method for calculating the hold entry, and remember this one last thing. If for some reason you get completely confused by the hold after an ATC instruction, tell them you need help. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope this module has helped you conquer the hold entry calculations and gives you a plan for flying the proper hold entry in your airplane. More importantly, I hope you no longer fear the thought of getting assigned a hold on your next cross-country flight.